My uncle ruined my family reunion forever. Before we begin the story, make sure to subscribe to our channel and never miss more incredible stories every day. Uncle Gary is standing in the middle of the lake house living room, smiling like a game show host, while my Grandma Ruth is crying into a paper napkin. The TV behind him is paused on a photo of my dead dad, my dad's memorial slideshow I spent weeks making, and someone has scribbled a crude caption across the screen in Sharpie. I can't even repeat it without my stomach turning. People are frozen in that weird, polite panic families do. A few cousins stare at their shoes. Someone's toddler whimpers. The smell of pot roast we'd been so proud of an hour ago hangs in the air like grease. I'm Brian, 32, the guy who always books the Airbnb, makes the spreadsheet, and sends the friendly reminder texts so everyone actually shows up. This reunion at a rented lake house outside Columbus was my idea. 2 nights, June 22nd to 23rd, and it wasn't cheap. I fronted $1,480 on my credit card for the house deposit and Venmo requested everyone in tidy little chunks so nobody could pretend they forgot. We were supposed to fix old rifts, eat together, laugh at the same dumb stories, take a group photo for Ruth's mantle. I told myself if I could pull this off, maybe our family could stop circling the same old wounds like buzzards. And now Gary has turned it into a spectacle on purpose, with Ruth sobbing and half the room looking at me like I planned it. Gary lifts his beer and says, "Come on, it's just a joke. Your generation is so sensitive." Ruth hiccups, eyes red. "Why would you do that to him, Gary?" He shrugs. "He's not here to care, Mom." My cousin Tessa catches my eye from the kitchen doorway. Her face isn't shocked like everyone else's. It's focused, like she's watching a magic trick and already knows where the rabbit is hidden. I take one step toward the TV and Gary's smile tightens, like he's daring me. Tessa mouths 2 words I can barely make out. "Check your phone." The timestamp is from 5 minutes ago. I pull it from my pocket and see a brand new bank alert I don't understand. Gary has always known how to ruin a room without technically doing anything. When I was 8, he taught me a funny handshake that ended with him yanking my arm so hard I cried. When I ran to Dad, Gary laughed and said, "Look at him, already a drama queen." Dad told him to knock it off. Gary winked at me like it was our secret. At 16, I got my first job at a grocery store. Gary showed up on my break, loud enough for my manager to hear, and said, "So when are you going to quit and live off your mom like your old man did?" My dad had been laid off that year. Gary said it like a joke, but his eyes were sharp and mean, like he was taking notes. Even as adults, he picks someone, presses a bruise, then stands back like he's innocent. The worst part is how the family helps him. Someone always says, "That's just Gary." Someone always says, "Don't start." Ruth is his mother, which means he can do a lot under the umbrella of concern. He calls her Ma. In public, kisses her cheek, carries her plate. In private, I've heard his voice drop into something colder. Last Thanksgiving, Ruth asked him to stop talking politics at the table. He smiled, and later in the kitchen I heard him hiss, "You need me, Ma. Don't forget that." I pretended I didn't hear because peace is the currency in our family, and I've been paying with it my whole life. 2 weeks before the reunion, I stopped by Ruth's ranch house to fix her porch light. Gary's truck was in the driveway. Through the cracked window, I heard him say, "Just sign where I highlighted, Ma. It's simpler." Ruth's voice was small. I like reading things. When I walked in, he snapped back into charm. "Brian, the family hero. You coming to the lake thing?" Ruth tried to smile, but her hand shook around her mug. I told him, "We're keeping it calm. No stunts. Ruth's health isn't a punchline." Gary held up both hands. "Scout's honor, Bree. I'm here for family." His grin never reached his eyes. I should have noticed how he stressed that word, embarrass, like he was making a promise. Planning the reunion felt like trying to build a bridge out of receipts and guilt. Ruth wanted the whole bunch together, which in our family means people who haven't spoken in years suddenly sharing a kitchen. I picked the lake house because it had enough bedrooms to keep the feud separated and a long table where Ruth could sit at the head like she used to. I made a spreadsheet. Who's coming from where, dietary stuff, beds, contributions. Tessa was the only one who actually read it. She texted me, "You're insane, but I love you." I Venmo requested $120 per adult for groceries and cleaning. People paid. Some late. Some with the classic, "Can I get you later?" which is code for never, but I covered it anyway because Ruth's voice had been thinner lately. On June 21st, I drove to the house early with coolers, paper plates, and the projector for Dad's slideshow. The listing photos made the place look bigger. In real life, it was a little worn, scuffed floors, a couch that leaned to one side. But the view of the water was perfect. I imagined Ruth on the back deck, wrapped in a blanket, smiling at everybody like she'd done something impossible. Gary was supposed to arrive Saturday morning. Friday night, he called me while I was labeling burger patties with a Sharpie like a man losing his mind. "You still collecting money?" he asked. "Yeah. Why?" He laughed. "Just curious how much you've got floating around." "It's all tracked," I said. "Tessa has access to." A pause. "Wow. Audit committee. Cute." I tried to keep my voice neutral. "Ruth's excited, Gary. Please don't make this about you." He sighed theatrically. "Everything's about me with you, Bree. Relax. I'm bringing a surprise." "What kind of surprise?" "The kind people remember," he said, and hung up. Ruth called right after, breathy and bright. "Did you get the cherry pie ingredients? Your father loved cherry." "I did," I promised, staring at the grocery bags. "You just show up, okay?" She laughed. "I always show up." After I hung up, I opened my notes app and wrote, "Keep Gary busy." It looked ridiculous, like planning around a natural disaster. I stared at my phone, suddenly sure his surprise was meant for me. Saturday afternoon, the house filled up the way it always does, too fast and too loud. Ruth arrived last, because she insisted on wearing a nice dress, even if it's a lake. Gary brought her, arm hooked like he was escorting a celebrity. He kissed her temple, then turned to me and said, "You outdid yourself, Brian. Didn't know you had it in you." I forced a smile. "Thanks for coming." He scanned the room. Wouldn't miss the big show. Dinner was decent at first. Everyone crowded the long table with plastic cups and mismatched chairs. Ruth told the story about the time my dad tried to grill in a thunderstorm, and Gary chimed in with little punchlines, harmless enough that people actually laughed. Then, after plates were cleared, I tapped my glass. "I made something," I said. "Just for Dad. For us." Ruth's eyes softened. "Oh, honey." I set up the projector, dimmed the lights, and hit play. Photos of my dad flashed up. Him holding me as a baby, him coaching Little League, him laughing with Ruth in her old kitchen. The room went quiet in the good way, the way you can feel people remembering together. 2 minutes in, the image flickered. The sound hiccuped. Then the slideshow cut to black and a new file opened, something I had never seen. A video of my dad, drunk, from some ancient camcorder angle, stumbling at a Christmas party. Someone had edited it with clown music. A giant caption popped up, "Father of the Year." I heard a strangled noise and realized it came from Ruth. "What is that?" I snapped, scrambling for the remote. Gary's voice floated from the couch. "Relax, Bree. It's history. People love the real stuff." Tessa stood up, so fast her chair scraped. "Gary, did you do this?" He lifted his hands, still smiling. "I'm not touching anything. Must be your precious tech." I yanked the HDMI cord out, but not before the video flashed one more frame. My dad's face frozen mid-fall, like the universe wanted to brand it onto Ruth's eyes forever. Ruth whispered, "Why would you show me that?" Gary leaned forward, soft as sugar. "Because he wasn't a saint, Ma." And that's when I saw my folder of reunion videos was gone. After the slideshow disaster, the weekend split into 2 versions. In the living room, people laughed too loud and pretended it was awkward but fine. In the kitchen, Ruth sat with her hands folded like she was praying, staring at nothing. I hovered between rooms, trying to stitch the air back together. "Hey," I told Gary quietly, in the hallway by the laundry room. That was cruel. He didn't even lower his voice. Cruel as lying to Ma for decades. "I'm just correcting the record." "What record?" I hissed. "He's been dead 5 years." Gary leaned in, beer on his breath. "And you're still using him as a shield." Before I could answer, Ruth called my name, and Gary slipped away like he hadn't said anything. By nightfall, more things started going wrong. The catered breakfast I'd scheduled for Sunday, simple trays from a local diner, texted me, "Canceled PR your request." I hadn't requested anything. I called the diner and the manager said, "We got an email from you last night. Said the reunion was off." My stomach dropped. "Can you forward me that email?" "Sure," she said, confused. "It came from Brian H." She read out an address that looked like mine, 1 letter off. Then Tessa pulled me aside and showed me her Venmo. "Did you refund Gary?" she asked. "What?" She turned her screen toward me. A payment from the reunion fund, $600, had been sent back to Gary at 4:17 p.m. with the note, "Thanks for covering groceries." I never wrote that. I never sent that. I hadn't even opened Venmo since morning. I opened my app with shaking hands. My account showed a completed transfer I didn't recognize. My password suddenly didn't work. Meanwhile, in the backyard, someone started arguing. Two relatives I'd worked hard to seat apart, because Gary had accidentally mentioned that one of them had called the other a thief years ago. It was like he was tossing lit matches into dry grass and watching which flame caught first. Ruth tried to stand and calm them, but her knees buckled. I caught her before she fell. She clutched my wrist and whispered, "Brian, he wants something." Before I could ask what she meant, Gary appeared behind us, smiling like he'd been invited. I tried to talk to Gary calmly, because calm is the only language our family respects. "Breakfast got canceled," I said, keeping my voice low so Ruth wouldn't hear. "And money moved out of the fund. Did you mess with my accounts?" Gary's eyebrows lifted in practiced innocence. "Brian, I can barely work my own phone." Tessa snorted from behind me. Gary ignored her. "I'll fix it," I said, though I didn't know how. "But if you're doing this," he cut in, still smiling. "If I'm doing what? Saving you from yourself?" Ruth's hand trembled on her cane. "Gary, leave him be." He softened instantly. "Ma, I'm just worried." Brian stressed. "He's probably mixing things up." He patted her shoulder like she was a child, then looked at me. "Get some sleep, champ." That night I couldn't. I sat on the edge of the guest bed and refreshed my email until my eyes burned. At 1:12 a.m., a new message came in from the diner manager. Subject line, cancellation request. Attached was the forwarded email thread. The cancellation message was signed Brian H. and used my full name, my phone number, even my little "thanks so much" signature line I copy-paste. But the sender address wasn't mine, it was Brian. Henderson@gmail.com. Instead of Brian. Henderson@gmail.com. Someone had made a near clone and written like me. I forwarded it to Tessa with one word, "Gary." She replied instantly, "I know." Then I heard it, Gary's voice, muffled through the thin wall, coming from the hallway outside Ruth's room. "You can't keep stalling," he said. "It's a simple signature, Ma." Ruth's voice, sleepy and confused. "Not tonight, Gary." A pause. His tone sharpened. "You want to die with strangers running your house? Because that's what Brian's doing, filling your head." My chest went tight. I opened my door a crack. The hallway light was on, and Gary's shadow stretched under Ruth's door like a stain. I stepped out barefoot, and the floorboard creaked. Gary went silent for half a beat. Then I heard him laugh softly and say, "Oh good, you're up." When he turned, his phone screen was still glowing in his hand. In the morning, Tessa and I escaped to the back deck with coffee like we were plotting a heist instead of surviving brunch. Ruth was inside, moving slowly, trying to pretend last night hadn't happened. Gary acted like a hero, frying bacon, calling everyone kiddo, playing music too loud so nobody had to talk about feelings. Tessa slid her phone across the table to me. "Look," she said. Her screen showed a screenshot of my Venmo profile, except it wasn't mine. My name, my photo, but the handle was off by one character, the same way the email address was off. Under it was a message thread. "Need you to refund Gary. He covered groceries. Do it now." It was sent from Brian to Tessa at 3:59 p.m. yesterday. "I didn't send that," I whispered. "I know," she said. "Because at 3:59 you were hauling Ruth's suitcase up the stairs. I have a video." She wasn't kidding. In her camera roll was a 10-second clip of me complaining about my back while Ruth laughed. The timestamp sat at the top like a witness. We went through our phones like detectives. Call logs, email headers, password reset texts. In my spam folder, there were 6 your login code messages from Venmo I'd missed last night. Someone had tried, over and over, until they got in. "How?" I asked. Tessa nodded toward the living room window. "He watched you type your passcode. Gary's a vulture. He waits." We called the lake house host to confirm nothing else had been changed. The host sounded apologetic. "We did get a message about an early checkout," she said. "But I didn't act on it because it didn't match your original booking name. Can you send me that message?" I asked, voice tight. A minute later, it hit my inbox. Same fake email address. Same tone as me. Same signature. Tessa leaned back, anger finally breaking through her calm. This isn't a prank. He's trying to take control of the weekend. And Grandma, I said, thinking of his words outside her door. Just then, Ruth texted me from inside the house. Come to the kitchen. Now. Alone. Ruth was sitting at the kitchen table with her purse open like she'd been robbed. Brian, she said, and her voice had that thin edge that means she's trying not to shake. Where's my envelope? What envelope? I asked, stepping closer. The one from my lawyer, she said. The papers. I brought them because Gary insisted we handle family business while everyone was here. My stomach turned. What papers? Ruth hesitated, embarrassed. It's about the house. And the little lake lot your grandfather bought years ago. I was updating things. Making sure it goes where I want. To who? I asked gently, already knowing the answer would make me angry either way. Not to Gary, she said quickly, like she'd read my face. He's been asking. Pressuring. I told him it stays in trust for the grandkids. I swallowed. Did he want you to sign something this weekend? Ruth nodded once. He said it was just to simplify. He highlighted lines and told me not to worry. When I told him I wanted time, he got sharp. My hands clenched into fists on the table edge. Ruth, did you sign anything? No, she said. I hid the envelope in my purse. Now it's gone. I looked at her purse. The zipper was half open, the inside pockets turned out. Are you sure you didn't move it? I asked, hating myself for even suggesting it. Ruth's eyes flashed. Brian, I'm old, not stupid. I took a breath. Okay, we'll find it. Tessa appeared at the doorway like she'd been summoned. Gary's outside with two guys, she whispered. I think they're from a towing company. A towing company? I repeated. Ruth's hand flew to her chest. Why would we need? Through the window, I saw Gary pointing at my car, laughing as if this was some fun logistical thing he was coordinating. Gary looked over his shoulder and met my eyes through the glass. His grin widened, like he'd just pressed the right button on a remote and watched me twitch. He knows my biggest fear is being broke. He's mocked it since Dad died, like needing stability is weakness. Ruth followed my gaze and her face drained of color. My car payment is on autopay. I'm not behind on anything. My phone buzzed. Repo's here. Hand over the keys or we tow. The repo guys turned out to be a bluff. I walked outside, heart pounding, and asked for paperwork. One of them looked confused until Gary clapped him on the back and said, all right, you got me. It was a joke. A joke. About towing my only way home. People laughed nervously because Gary gave them permission to. I didn't laugh. Tessa didn't laugh. Ruth didn't even come outside. When Gary wandered off, I pulled the two guys aside. Did he hire you? I asked. One of them shrugged. He paid us $50 to show up and scare you. Said you owed him money. Did he pay cash? I asked, already opening my notes app. Cash, the guy said. And he told us to text that number. He pointed at the phone in his hand. I snapped a photo of the number and his towing company logo on his shirt. Inside, Tessa and I made a plan in whispers like teenagers hiding from parents. Step 1. Lock down my accounts. I reset every password using my laptop hotspot off Tessa's phone, in case the house Wi-Fi was compromised. Step 2. Document everything. We made a shared folder labeled Reunion and started dumping proof. The fake email address, the diner cancellation thread, screenshots of the Venmo transfer, and the password reset texts with timestamps. Tessa recorded a voice memo of Ruth explaining the missing lawyer envelope, because her memory is good now, but Gary is the kind of man who counts on it not staying good. Then I called the number that had texted me about the repo. It went to voicemail. The greeting was Gary's voice, disguised in that fake, professional tone he uses when he's lying. Hi, you've reached Lakeview Recovery. Leave your info. I saved it and sent it to Tessa with the note. That's him. We couldn't confront him yet. Not without Ruth present, and not without someone neutral to translate the mess into plain English for the relatives who always default to Gary didn't mean it. Tessa had a friend, Attorney Sloan, who handled elder law. She agreed to come by Sunday afternoon. If you think your grandmother is being pressured. I looked at Ruth, dozing on the couch, and felt something hard settle in my chest. By sunset, I would force Gary's mask off in front of everyone. Sunday afternoon came with humid heat and forced cheer. I reheated leftovers for a family lunch because the diner trays never arrived. Gary acted offended on my behalf. Can't trust businesses anymore, he said loudly, like he wasn't the one who canceled it. He made a whole performance of washing dishes, being helpful, positioning himself where everyone could see. Tessa texted me. Sloan ETA 20 minutes. Keep him busy. Easy to say. Gary kept circling me like a shark. When I stepped into the pantry to grab napkins, he followed and shut the door behind him. The little space went dim, smelling like onions and sunscreen. You're running around whispering, he said softly. Makes you look guilty. I tried to keep my face blank. I'm hosting. I'm busy. Gary leaned closer. Don't do this, Brian. Do what? He smiled like we were sharing a private joke. Turn Ma against me. Dig up old nonsense. You think these people are on your side? They'll pick the one who's loudest and most confident. That's how it's always been. I felt my pulse in my throat. Why did you show that video of Dad? Gary's eyes flickered. Because you keep sainting him. And because it worked. Look at her. She's soft. She's scared. She'll sign what I put in front of her if she thinks it'll stop the fighting. My hands shook. So you admit it. He laughed under his breath. Admit what? Brian, you're spiraling. You always spiral. Remember when you accused your teacher of losing your homework? Same energy. The gaslighting was so smooth, it almost worked, like it always has. For a second, I heard the old family chorus. Don't start. Don't ruin the weekend. Be the bigger person. Gary reached into his pocket and flashed Ruth's lawyer envelope. Just a corner, like a magician showing the card. You want this? He whispered. Then behave. Footsteps creaked in the hallway outside. Gary's smile snapped back into place. He opened the pantry door and called out, bright as sunshine. Ma, Brian's just grabbing napkins. Ruth's voice drifted closer. Brian. Gary's hand tightened on the envelope behind his back. I didn't lunge for the envelope. That's what Gary wanted. Me looking unstable. Instead, I walked out of the pantry smiling like I'd just found the good napkins. Ruth was in the hallway, worry etched into her face. Honey, are you okay? I'm fine. I lied, gently steering her toward the living room. I just want to do the group photo before anyone leaves, okay? On the dock at sunset. Like we planned. Gary appeared behind her, voice warm. Great idea. Give Ma a nice memory. Tessa caught my eye over Ruth's shoulder and gave the smallest nod. Sloan was here. Attorney Sloan didn't look like a courtroom drama. She looked like someone's calm aunt, late 40s, practical haircut, plain blazer over jeans. She introduced herself to Ruth first, not to me, and spoke in that careful tone professionals use around older people. Ms. Ruth Henderson, I'm Sloan. Tessa said you might want someone to answer questions today. No pressure. Ruth blinked, then straightened. I do have questions. Gary's smile faltered for half a second. Questions about what? Sloan didn't take the bait. About documents, property, and consent. I'm here as a resource. Gary laughed too loudly. Oh, come on. We're at a reunion, not a deposition. That's up to Ruth, Sloan said, steady. Not you. We gathered everyone in the living room first, under the pretense of organizing the slideshow again. The correct one, I emphasized. I plugged my laptop into the TV, hands sweating, and opened a folder titled Photos. Gary lounged on the couch like a king, Ruth beside him, Tessa and Sloan standing near the doorway. Before we go outside, I said, voice louder than I felt, I want to clear up a few mix-ups from this weekend, so we can end on a good note. Someone groaned playfully. Someone else said, Brian's doing admin again. Gary lifted his beer in a toast. Let the kid have his spreadsheets. I clicked once and a screenshot filled the screen. The fake email address, highlighted, with the diner manager's reply underneath. Gary's eyes narrowed. Sloan folded her arms, watching him like she'd seen this type before. I opened the next file and heard Gary set his beer down. I clicked through the evidence like ripping off bandages. First, the diner cancellation email, showing the sender address one letter off and the timestamp, 1:07 a.m. when I was asleep in the downstairs bedroom. Then, the lake house hosts forwarded early checkout message from the same fake account. Murmurs started. That's not Brian's email, someone said. Gary leaned back, still performing calm. Anybody can fake an email. This proves nothing. So I pulled up Venmo. I'd screenshotted the transfer history before I locked my account. On the TV, a $600 payment glowed in ugly blue. Sent to Gary M. at 4:17 p.m. Note, thanks for covering groceries. Tessa spoke up, voice sharp. At 4:17, Brian was upstairs helping Ruth unpack. I have video. I played it. 10 seconds of me grunting with a suitcase, Ruth laughing in the background. The timestamp sat in the corner like a stamp of truth. Gary's smile tightened. So what? Someone sent me money. Maybe Brian felt guilty for how he's been treating me. I clicked again. A photo I'd taken outside. The repo text number next to the towing company logo. Then I played the voicemail greeting. Gary's own voice filled the room. Hi, you've reached Lakeview Recovery. A few people actually gasped. Ruth made a small sound, like air leaving a balloon. Gary sat up fast. That's not me. Sloane stepped forward. It is, she said calmly. Same cadence, same phrasing. And more importantly, the pattern matters. Impersonation, financial transactions, and intimidation. Gary's face flushed red. Oh, so now we're doing expert testimony at a family reunion? Ruth stared at him, eyes wet but hard. Where's my envelope, Gary? Gary's jaw worked. Ma, you're confused. Brian's confusing you. I held up my phone. Ruth, I changed my passcode this morning. Nobody knows it but me. Then I turned the screen toward the room and showed the last thing Gary expected. A screenshot from my iPhone's recent password changes log, completed at 4:12 p.m. yesterday, while my phone was on the table. Tessa added quietly. Gary sat right there. Gary sprang up, pointing at me. You set me up. Sloane didn't raise her voice. No, Mr. Miller. You did. The room went dead silent, and Gary finally dropped the envelope onto the table. For a second, nobody moved, like we'd all been waiting our whole lives for the truth and didn't know what to do once it arrived. Ruth reached for the envelope first. Her fingers shook, but she held it like it was something sacred. Gary lunged. Ma, give me that. You're being manipulated. Tessa stepped between them. Touch her, and I call the cops. Gary's eyes snapped to mine. You're really going to do this to your own blood? You did it to us, I said, and my voice surprised me with how steady it sounded. Sloane opened the envelope carefully, checked the contents, and nodded at Ruth. These are estate documents and a proposed quitclaim deed, she said, loud enough for everyone to hear. Ruth, you do not have to sign anything today, and no one can pressure you to. A relative near the fireplace whispered, quitclaim? Like signing over the house. Ruth's chin lifted. Yes, she said, voice thin but clear. Gary wanted my home. Gary threw up his hands. I wanted to protect it. Brian can't even manage a reunion without crying. Someone, an uncle I barely talked to, muttered, Gary, what is wrong with you? That cracked something. Suddenly people were talking at once. Half the room looked at Gary like he was a stranger. The other half looked at me like I'd thrown a grenade. Brian, couldn't you handle this privately? Someone hissed. Privately. Like Gary's cruelty belongs behind closed doors. Sloane asked Ruth, do you want to leave the house tonight? We can call a non-emergency line and document the coercion. Identity theft is also an option. Ruth's eyes met mine. I want him out, she said. Gary laughed, sharp and ugly. Out of my mother's life? Tessa opened the front door. Leave, Gary. He looked around, searching for allies, but the room had shifted. Even the people who used to shrug and say, that's just Gary, wouldn't meet his eyes. He grabbed his keys, then turned back to Ruth with a smile that didn't belong on a human face. You'll regret this. As he left, my phone buzzed with a Venmo chargeback request in his name. The reunion ended in silence and slamming car doors. People didn't even do the group photo. They hugged Ruth like they were apologizing for not seeing sooner. A few avoided her entirely, like her pain was contagious. By dusk, the lake house looked like a party that got rained out. Paper plates in the trash, half-empty soda bottles, the air heavy with what we didn't fix. Ruth stayed with me that night, not because she was helpless, but because she didn't want to be alone in a house Gary had been trying to take. We drove back to her place the next morning and changed the locks. I sat at her kitchen table while she called her bank and put a note on her account. No changes without her in person, no help from family members. Sloane met us Tuesday. She explained things in plain language. Ruth could name a trusted contact at the bank, revoke any old authorizations, and put everything in writing so Gary couldn't claim Ma wanted it. It wasn't dramatic. It was boring, protective paperwork, the kind of boring that keeps wolves out. Tessa set up a new email for Ruth with two-factor authentication because Gary had been using her old password like it belonged to him. Ruth joked, I never thought I'd need spy tactics at my age, but her laugh didn't reach her eyes. As for me, I did the hardest thing. I stopped being the family glue. When relatives tried to guilt me, "You humiliated Gary. You ruined Ruth's weekend," I said, "No, Gary did. I just stopped hiding it." Then I stopped replying. I muted group chats. I didn't explain myself twice. Ruth started saying no out loud, which is its own kind of therapy. "No, Gary," she told him on the one call she took. "You are not welcome here." She hung up with her hand shaking, then looked at me like she was surprised she survived it. I wish I could say the family healed quickly, but truth doesn't work like that. Some people apologized. Some doubled down. The only clean thing was the boundary. 3 months later, a certified letter arrived in Ruth's mailbox with Gary's return address. Ruth didn't open the certified letter right away. She set it on the counter like it was a dead mouse and went about making tea, the same way she used to ignore spiders in the bathtub until someone else handled them. I watched her hands, still a little shaky, still stubborn, and realized how much energy she'd spent for decades managing Gary's moods. When she finally slid a butter knife under the flap, Tessa was there and Sloane was on speakerphone. It felt ridiculous and necessary, like a seatbelt in your own driveway. The letter wasn't an apology. Of course it wasn't. It was a 3-page demand written in Gary's voice but polished by someone else. Accusations that I'd defamed him, that Ruth was being unduly influenced, that he intended to pursue all legal remedies to protect family assets. Ruth read the first paragraph, exhaled slowly, and then did something that still makes my throat burn to remember. She laughed. Not a happy laugh. A clean laugh. The kind you make when someone finally confirms what you already knew. Sloane said, "This is intimidation. We respond once, in writing, and we don't engage beyond that. Ruth, you're allowed to choose peace." Ruth looked at me. "I thought keeping quiet was peace," she said. "But it was just letting him drive." That's the thing nobody tells you about family. Sometimes the price of keeping the table calm is letting one person poison the food. We never had another reunion like that weekend. Some relatives still won't speak to me. A few send Christmas cards like nothing happened. But Ruth is safer. Her documents are locked down. Gary doesn't have access, not to her accounts, not to her house, not to the story we tell about ourselves. And me? I stopped auditioning for the role of peacemaker. I learned that boundaries aren't punishments. They're locks on a door you finally admit needs one. If you're reading this and you have a Gary, start writing things down. Save screenshots. Trust the quiet cousin who notices patterns. Bring in a professional when money, property, or elders are involved. And when the family chorus says, "Don't start," remember, you're not starting it. You're ending it.